whether it's you're trying to get into shape or training for something, and the very delayed gratification that comes along with that.
Yeah.
So that has taught me so much about if you're not seeing the results, just feeling bad for yourself and sitting back and not doing anything will not get you the results you want. And there's an element too of where I just kind of inherently have a more optimistic feature within myself that I definitely have taken on from my dad. Both my parents own their own businesses, and my dad specifically has run a business now for 2.5 decades, and he's always provided for his family. He's never worried about it. And it's always been kind of a word of mouth thing. So I think there's a big part of just my approach to real estate that was like, what's going to happen is going to happen. And so, worrying and stressing about it, that's not going to breed the results that you're looking for. So just kind of keep your head down, stick with it, remain consistent, and things will fall into place.
Welcome to the Real Better Life podcast, where people that are writing stories worth telling share their knowledge, wisdom, and perspective to help you go further, faster as you move to your better life. Over to your hosts, Dave Ness and Rob Alkema.
All right. I'm here today with the great Kyle Petersen. What's up, buddy?
What up?
How's it going?
Good, dude. It's going well.
Yeah.
Better now.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. First off, abs or nuggets?
Nuggets.
Nuggets?
Yeah.
Why?
Unfortunately, I'm not the biggest LeBron fan. And so I would love to see them sweep the Lakers again. Yeah.
This is one of many reasons why I love you.
Yeah.
I'm also not a fan of LaFlop.
Yeah.
They won that game on the Jamal Murray walk-off.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, we were out and about and we were driving home, and I was like, I don't know what's better, the Nuggets winning or the Lakers losing.
Yeah, honestly, great case. Yeah.
Good, man. So I wanted to talk to you. Here's a little bit of a backdrop for the listeners. I wanted to talk to you because about a week ago, I was watching the Slack channel, and the Slack channel's blowing up, and we have like a specific good news channel in there. And I remember thinking, I'm like, golly, I keep seeing KP's name pop up a lot. I went back and I looked, and you had 4 different properties under contract in the span of 7 days, right? And then I actually went and I looked a little bit closer at the number. So I reached out to you and said, hey man, can we just get some time and talk about what's going well and how are you so hot right now? And I looked, and you actually have 6 transactions pending right now. You just had a closing last week. And what's really interesting is to give you some props, because I want to talk about the start of your year this year. Here we are, we're sitting in late April, and the start of your year was probably not what you wanted it to look like, right? So if we rewind, if we go to the last 12 months, right, going back to this day exactly a year ago, and we look at your closed and pending transactions, and when I looked at pending, just anything that's going to close in the next 30 days or less, right? Over the last 12 months, what we would call your rolling 12, you have 23 transactions closed and pending, right? So you're averaging about 2 a month. What's interesting though is when you go look at 2024, up until these 6 that you have pending and the one that you closed last week, before that, you had 1 closing in March, and that was your only closing so far this year.
Yeah.
I actually feel bad saying that because I'm like, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but it was a slow start to the year.
Definitely.
Right. And you got married at the end of January. It was the end of January, right?
Yep.
The 30th?
Yeah. I mean, you were there, Rob.
I was. But I had also just come back from Hawaii, and I was in a time warp. And so congrats again.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you had gotten married. You guys had a lot of planning leading up to that because it was a out-of-state destination wedding. Yep. Then we had just come out of New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving. It's already kind of the slow season where real estate starts to slow down. So that had to have been pretty frustrating. And then all of a sudden, just boom, you get 6 of them under contract, and it totally turns things around. And I'm sure it feels differently now than it maybe felt a month ago. So what I wanted to get into is talk a little bit about, in real estate in general, big picture, you're going to experience some of these peaks and valleys, right? And I think people want to be on the peaks consistently and for as long as possible, but it's inevitable that at some times you're going to end up in these valleys. And the valleys to me are, it's not only when things aren't going well, but it's when you're doing a ton of things right and things still aren't going well. Like you're just not getting the results that you expect or the results that you feel like you deserve. And so talk a little bit about what that's like. That's sort of a reality of real estate. But what's that like for you? And how do you think about that when you find yourself in one of those valleys?
I like to look at it, for sure. To speak to, the beginning of this year, obviously, there's multiple factors that played into this specific situation. And so the biggest thing for me, and I think, if you're a new agent listening to this, it's probably going to be more challenging to exactly relate, or for sure will be if you've never been in a sales role or even any sort of production-based career and that sort of thing. So For me, I don't get that frustrated with it. I mean, it is frustrating, but I'm reminded of a conversation that Alex Stanford had with me probably February, early March, something like that, once we got back from the wedding. It was a few weeks after we got back from the wedding. And he asked me, he was like, dude, I just wanted to check in. Obviously, he was like, I know you're capable of being great. And he was courteous to the fact that just got married. He was understanding. Sure. And so, he was just like, are you okay? Not so much like, is there something wrong with your business? He just like, I know that you may be a little bit self-critical with your business and that sort of thing. And I was like, dude, I'm totally good. Like, because I know I wasn't doing anything, like I wasn't burning or losing business necessarily. Like there was very, very few instances where, maybe I was competing with multiple agents and I was losing business because of lack in quality of my presentation or service or conversation that I had with that particular client. It was just a big part of this business is being in front of the right people at the right time. And there is a level of competency, of course, that comes into it, level of skill developed over the course as you close more transactions that will for sure play into it. But there is also an element of being in front of the right people at the right time. Yeah. And so I knew I wasn't doing anything necessarily wrong. I'm very, very consistent with follow-up and that sort of thing. I'm very consistent with just doing my job and doing what's expected of me. So it wasn't, I was never down on myself. And so I look at it from a very practical sense of like, I knew I wasn't really doing anything wrong. I was remembering all of these factors of like, look, we just took like 12 or 13 days off for Christmas. Lead flow is obviously very low going into the holidays. On top of that, Anna and I didn't take on a ton of new business between the holiday and the wedding. And so there was a good 60 days that we couldn't really stack for the new year. And so I knew that, had a big effect on it. So for those reasons, I was looking at it very practically and understanding like, all right, it's going to take a minute to get back on pace. But yeah, I guess just my overall outlook is that I think it's important to understand you just can't look at it as plain and black and white as like, I haven't closed deals, so there must be something wrong with me. Yeah. There needs to be more consideration into a lot of external factors.
So I wrote down 3 things as you were talking through that. Just the confidence that comes with knowing that you weren't doing things to lose business. Yeah. You weren't getting the business that you wanted, but you weren't losing business. Second thing was, I love that idea of just constantly reminding yourself, like part of it is just getting the right people at the right time. Yeah. It's that old saying of like, hey, if you just keep doing the right things long enough, good things are going to happen. And there's an element to that. But also like when you were just talking about what you said, there was intentional choices to not take leads. There was intentional choices to take time off and to really protect that time off, right? And most people probably don't know this. Not only did you guys get married at the end of January, it's not like you came right back home to Denver and got right back in the swing of things. You guys went on a honeymoon for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So the wedding was in Florida. From the time we left for the wedding to the time we got back from the honeymoon was like 17 days.
Yeah.
So like in total, it was 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, I love that. So that explains why you probably weren't that frustrated. Now, was it always that way? Because you're about 4 years into your real estate career. I'm sure you've been through some valleys before. Was it always that way? Or previous times when you found yourself in valleys, was it a similar experience?
Yeah, great question. So, fortunately for me, I think it's almost become a cliche in the business sales world of applying any sort of fitness, whether it's you're trying to get into shape or training for something, and the very delayed gratification that comes along with that. Yeah. So that has taught me so much about if you're not seeing the results, just, feeling bad for yourself and sitting back and not doing anything will not get you the results you want. So and there's an element too of where I just kind of inherently have a more optimistic feature within myself that I definitely have taken on from my dad. Both my parents own their own businesses, and my dad specifically has run a business now for 2.5 decades, and he's always provided for his family. He's never worried about it. And it's always been kind of a word of mouth thing. So I think there's a big part of just my approach to real estate that was like, what's going to happen is going to happen. And so, worrying and stressing about it, that's not going to breed the results that you're looking for. So just kind of keep your head down, stick with it, remain consistent, and things will fall into place.
Love it. So as we get into a little bit more of like the practical application of this, so that's the backdrop. What are the things that you are doing to create momentum for yourself in a place where you had lost some momentum, not because you did anything wrong, just it was intentional. But how does somebody get momentum when they don't have momentum? Because momentum is hard to get, but it's really easy to maintain once you have it. So unpack some of the things that you were doing to create the momentum you have now. And I'm thinking like, what were you doing over the last 90 days to create what's happening right in front of us?
No, absolutely. I would say it's important to look at, and I think we will dive into exactly, where some of these under contracts came from. But, in the past 90 days, nothing like too dramatically different than what I normally do with my business that I had been doing. I would say the biggest thing for a new agent to, I think the most important thing is for them to be a sponge, for them to have a huge desire to learn from other people that have been successful, but also to be super intentional with like actually taking leads. I think looking at lead metrics like acceptance rate. And if I'm a new agent and my acceptance rate is not like 90+%, there's a problem with that. So like very practical things like taking on new business, taking on new leads, not being afraid to go out and fail and screw up and learn from that, I think is super important. But even, I guess, just to specifically talk to my past 90 days, like I said, nothing too dramatically different than anything that I have been doing. Like before we hopped on the podcast, I was for 3 years prior to joining Thrive, I was with a different company. And then once I joined Thrive, even that would have been fall of 2022, all of last year, I had just a dramatically different approach to how I take on new business and then also work past clients and that sort of thing. So I think that has had a big impact, but not necessarily anything that has directly correlated to the past 90 days of what has happened with under contracts and that sort of thing. But because you got to remember, it's just such a pipeline and nurture business. 4 of the under contracts I've had in the past couple weeks were all leads from last summer. So,
can you talk more about, because just the 6 that you have pending right now, if I can just go through this. 2 of them were Fast Expert leads. 1 of them was a seller. 1 of them was a buyer. 1 of them is a Zillow Flex lead. That was a buyer. 1 of them is a Sphere deal. That's a seller. 1 was a Google organic lead. And 1 was not a Zillow Flex lead, but just a regular old Zillow lead. So talk about what you just said, right? Would you say 4 of these were from last summer?
Yeah. Well, okay. So the listing was a past client that I had closed at the end of 2021. So he reached out. We were selling his house. So that's that. The 2 Fast Expert, well, it was actually 1 lead. It was a divorced couple that's selling their house in Beaumar, and the wife is purchasing a home. And I connected with them last June or July, and they weren't officially divorced at that time. They had to go through that whole court system, and I just stayed in touch, was able to actually develop a relationship where they were telling the court at their final court case that I was going to be the agent that was going to work with them. So that really helped solidify the business there. Remaining in contact and, that sort of thing, staying in touch with those people. And it's, like I said, it's a nurture business. So just being able to stay top of mind, provide value and that sort of thing in the interim. But that was a buy sell. It's a divorce. We're selling their house in Beaumar, and then I'm helping the wife purchase a house right next door. So that all happened. And then the other one was a Google organic. Met her last summer. They're selling a house in New Mexico. It just has taken a while. It kind of happened to have all happened in the same weekend. So like there was nothing really in particular. Just that was just how it all unfolded.
Nice. Yeah. And you keep saying this. You're like, I just do what I normally do. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do you normally do? So what does that look like in terms of what is your normal rhythm of like keeping new things coming into the funnel, but also staying on top of what's already in the funnel?
Yeah. So, it's definitely, I think, a learned trait. And some people, it comes pretty naturally, but it's definitely a learned trait. In sales, obviously, it's so common for people to have within the first either 3 or 4 months of their career in real estate to have like 4 or 5 under contract, and then they could go 6 months without doing that again.
Yeah.
So there is that classic roller coaster approach. And so, I was taught and I learned really quick to always be looking down the road like, yeah, we got under contract, but what's next? So I just have always a forward-looking approach to that. So
I'm so glad you talked about that, because that's a real dilemma most people find themselves in. They get really busy and then they stop putting new stuff in the top of the funnel. And then everything closes and then it's like, crap, right? And then it's peak and valley and peak and valley. And that's a miserable way to run the business because it's stressful. You want it to be consistent. And so how do you think about that? And like, what do you actually do? Do you have like a set number of new clients you want to get in the top of the funnel? Or is it a certain number of leads you want to be taking on a monthly or quarterly basis? Like, what do you do to keep the pipeline fresh and sustained while still working what's already in there?
A little out of my control, but anything I can control. And the big one that I do try and make as much effort to is that anytime I get in touch with a lead, whether it's on the phone or at a showing, it's always trying to establish that business, getting that face-to-face. So face-to-face is always my number one priority. And that's why I was raised, quote unquote, in the real estate world with what we call our CG business, the Fast Expert, the Google Organic, the Realtor.com, all of those type of leads. And speed to lead and getting that face-to-face is much more important. And it's a different type of lead compared to Zillow Flex, where it's like, you're getting that showing right away, you're getting the face-to-face right away, but then it's converting that business. So for me, it's making every effort to establish that business, establish myself as the professional. And it's approaching every single lead with, I got to win this business. I got to earn their trust, and I have to be their go-to professional. So
okay. And then you talked a lot about nurture. So here you are, it's funny, even with the time you took off, you still had a lot of stuff in your pipeline, right? Because you've been building this over time. And so you had stuff from last summer and you have new stuff coming in. You talk about like, hey, I'm always nurturing. I'm always looking to stay top of mind and add value. What are the things that you do? Like, what is the cadence and what are the things you do to stay top of mind and to add value with somebody who's not necessarily doing a transaction 30 days?
Definitely depends. I'm a big proponent of and believer and very outspoken that this is such a nuanced business. So it's really hard to have like any sort of blanket approach outside of just like nurturing. Okay, so that's the blanket approach, but how does that apply to specific people? Because there are so many different situations and that sort of thing when it comes to this business. So it really depends on that person's, and it's unfortunate because I can't give a specific. What I can say is it's specific on their situation. For someone that's just like very, I would say lukewarm, let's say they own a home, they're just looking for the right property, they're in no rush, then I'm just making every effort to find that house. And so I'm sending houses to them every week, maybe giving them a market update here and there. The majority of just like staying in touch with them in regards to whatever house that I'm trying to find for them.
Totally.
For a different lead, it may be, we're happy to meet with you. We're on a lease until September and we're not ready to buy. So let's say 6 months out. That might be the type of lead where it's just like some sort of market update. Like for instance, this past month, I've been sending out, I built this awesome template of video I did about the NAR lawsuit. I've gotten a ton of good feedback on that. So it can be a little bit more situational to what's happening in the real estate world. It's just like, it really depends on how you nurture people and the frequency and that sort of thing. Because, long-term nurtures, I do try and touch, once a month or so, but it may not be appropriate, or they may specifically say like, don't talk to me for 60 days or 90 days or something. So
yeah, that's really good. I like that. So if we're shifting gears a little bit, as you look at the last 30 days and here you are, like the results are starting to pour in, what's maybe a lesson or two that you could pull out of that you'd want to share with other people?
Biggest thing I would want to tell like any new agent or anyone that's just looking from the outside perspective is that I was very fortunate that like 2 of these leads were in the past like 30 days that I had received. One of them was like one of those unicorns where it was the first house I showed them and they liked it. We put an offer in. So it's like, that's going to happen every now and then, but that's definitely not the norm.
Right.
Don't always take people's success at face value in regards to like their under contract or closed rate. Look at where are these leads coming from? How have they stayed in touch with them? They were in multiple agent situations, whether it's a listing or a buy even. And so I think it's important to look at the specifics. So I would say the big message is that consistency and just sticking with everything in this business is going to be the biggest element to your success, in my opinion. I just, you asked me before, and you'll be getting to this later, but like, if I had to say what my superpower is, it's just like remaining consistent every single day. I really treat this as just a normal, not a 9 to 5 by any means, but just a normal job. Like you got to do what you got to do every single day if you're going to be successful. Yeah, that would be my main thing.
That's one of the last questions I had was, it's important when things are going really well that you don't get too high.
Yeah.
And also when things are going not well in terms of results, that you don't let yourself get too low and have it start affecting your attitude negatively one way or the other, right? So what are parts of your daily or weekly routine that ground you and keep you in a really good spot no matter how things happen to be going from a results standpoint?
Yeah, I don't know if it's anything, for me, it's not necessarily a routine that grounds me, I would say. It's more of my mindset towards how I approach the business, which is just like, these under contracts are awesome. They're going to close in 30 days. So who's next up? I mean, in regards to just sustaining any element or any degree of consistency with it is just like understanding and remembering these people are going to close, and to be able to approach every day with, what do I need to do today? Not even to win the day. For me, that's not how I approach it, but like, what are the standards that I essentially live my life by? Not necessarily a daily goal or a daily win, but just what do I need to do? What is required of me today? Yeah. Like, what do I need to do today? And so
talk about it, because you just said that. And I was like, oh yeah, we just briefly touched on that before we jumped on here, but you talked about this quote in reference to Michael Jordan about standards. What was the quote?
Well, okay, yeah. So I can't remember the exact quote. And it was actually a quote of a quote. It was Tony Robbins. It was him talking about Michael Jordan. And I think it was actually him referencing Tim Grover, where he was talking about, Michael Jordan's success was in a large degree due to the standards that he lived his life by. MJ could have been someone that approached his life with like daily wins and goals, but I think it more so, he obviously just had a natural killer instinct that was far more convicting than a lot of us have. And so I think what really like impacted me from what Tony Robbins was saying was that Michael Jordan rises to the standards he sets for himself, right? And so his standard was like being in the gym 5 a.m. every day, grinding his tail off, same with Kobe Bryant. So for me, it was like, I liked that because it's just like, this is what it is. Like, it's not a motivation, it's not something that I need to refuel in myself. It's just kind of, and I think part of it's just kind of natural. It's definitely something that I think can be learned, but it's my standard. It's just what I have to get done today in order to be where I want to be.
Can you share a little bit more about that, like your personal standard?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I guess just practically what it looks like is just, and this is partially just, what I enjoy. I don't know how much this contributes actually to my, success professionally, but like in the morning, I wake up probably around 5:30. I do all of my reading, whether it's in the Bible, reading personal stuff, prayer, that sort of thing. I do that usually from like 5:30 to 6:30, 6:45. I'm in the gym from like 6:30, 6:45 to like 8:15, 8:30-ish. And then I'm usually in front of my desk by around 9. That's kind of, on a normal day, that's what that looks like. Obviously, things come up. Like, for instance, this morning I had a call with a client about inspection at 8 o'clock. So I kind of had to restructure my morning a little bit. But like getting those 3 things done in the morning, which is Bible, prayer, and reading, that's how I love to start the day. Not necessarily because it's just like more of a personal preference. Yeah. Now, as far as like professionally, I'm very much in my FUB every day, follow bus.
Yep.
I run my business with a tasks method. And I have a few mentees, and I try so hard to get them to implement this because to me, this is the best way. I know some people, and I tell them, like, whatever is the best way for you to not let leads to fall through the cracks, do that. But for me, it's having tasks in regards to the follow-up structure or to-dos, whatever, on these leads. Every single lead in my database has a task on it. For right now, obviously, I have a lot more transaction management that I'm doing, and I usually will knock that out in the morning. I'm going through my tasks list and touching those people I need to touch, being very intentional with them, and not just doing it to do it, but doing it at a high quality. That's been a big change in the past probably year and a half since I've been at Thrive, because we were so inundated with leads at my prior company that I couldn't spend quality time with the leads I was getting. It was like I was still touching them, but it wasn't quality. And so the quality of my outreach, my nurture, my service overall to my clients has definitely improved while being at Thrive. But taking care of all my tasks is like priority number 1, because I don't have to think about like who do I need to follow up with. I make notes in there, and so I really leverage that.
I love that. Yeah. And it's been good just seeing like how dialed in you are with your database management and like stuff doesn't slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening and they're like, what tasks method do you speak of, Kyle? Rather than covering it on here, I would rather people reach out to you and maybe just be like, hey man, can we just get some time? Can I look at your FUB? Like, how do you actually set this up? And then the people that you're working with that are just getting their careers launched, that are mentoring with you, it's great because they just get to be in the passenger seat and see exactly what you do day in and day out, and literally and figuratively get to be in the passenger seat.
Yep.
So that's cool. We'll wrap up with this. What are you most excited about next?
Professionally, personally?
Anything. There's no wrong answer.
Man. So I recently met a buddy at church that has been getting into fix and flips, and he has been having like a ton of success with that. And then, I've been talking with Theron, with Allison on the team, and, they've had a ton of success with it. Obviously, Theron's like newer to it, which is actually really helpful because I just have a surface, more of an interest at this point, but Anna's been really wanting to dive into that too, because, for me personally, I would love to be more of like buy and hold long-term real estate investing that's the whole reason I got into the business. And so obviously that takes money to do that. And so fix and flip is a good way to cure that capital to go and buy those investments. But that's like pretty exciting to me recently, is kind of diving into that, learning more about that, approaching that with, partnership or anything with my friend or whatever that looks like. That I've been pretty pumped about that lately. It's been fun to kind of look into that. We made an offer on a house over in kind of Highway 6 and Federal area on a house.
Okay.
It was priced well. It needed a lot of work. It got snatched up right away. And it was like, it was so much work that it was like, all right, for my first flip, that's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
So.
I can hear like just the excitement in you talking about it. Yeah. Like you definitely light up. It's cool when you say like, yeah, that's the whole reason you got into the business. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, first off, that's a new challenge for you to tackle, which is going to keep you alive and growing and excited. Secondly, you're right. As you get into that, it's ultimately just going to help you go further, faster towards some of the things you want life to look like later on down the road, right? Not even just what you want your business to look like, but how the business can support your life, right? Because I think that's something, I guess we'll wrap with this, is it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, especially when you're busy, especially when you have a pipeline, especially when you got this whole FUB account with all these tasks attached and all these people that you're building relationships with. It's easy to lose sight of like, hey, the whole point of this business is I only experience success when I help other people. And as I continue to help those other people and have personal success, this business is ultimately helping me create the kind of life that I want to have, not the other way around where I'm like sacrificing everything in my life to have the kind of business that I want to have.
Right.
And so I guess just a good reminder there for anybody who's listening, like, yeah, you don't have to love every part of every day. in the business, but just stay connected with what is the business ultimately getting for you or creating for you, or how is it helping you become
very well said.
Better version of yourself and more impactful to more people around you. So
yeah, totally.
All right, man. It's great having you in here.
Dude, thank you. It's an honor. Finally.
Well, we got to do it again because we have to do like our official interview.
Yeah.
Like we got to hear the whole backstory and we got to hear about the pilgrimage from Iowa to Colorado and diving into real estate as here's a little teaser, diving into real estate as an unpaid intern, making calls to investors for 7 hours a day, not getting paid.
Yeah, no.
And driving Uber and Lyft in weird hours of the day just to pay your bills while you got your real estate. You're such a stud. Like, I don't know. Most people would not have done what you did to start your career.
I wouldn't have done what I did. Going back.
Good thing you were young and dumb.
Yeah. No, man.
Now that you're so old.
yeah, exactly.
What are you now?
Older and wiser.
Are you 24 now?
Yeah. 24.
Okay.
24. Yep.
When's your birthday?
August 25.
All right.
Yeah.
August what?
13th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. It's my twin nephew's birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right on.
All right, man. Well, happy Wednesday. Great having you on again.
Thanks, Rob.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Cheers.